So you're in for a treat with our next speaker. As we were talking about VR and AR earlier, this next speaker actually isn't present. So you're going to get a little hologram of the presentation here. And the talk is called AI-Powered Conversations for Democracy. So AI has now awakened and shortly will begin fighting for our rights, and we hope it will not start fighting for its own. Today, machine learning and AI technology is helping to improve our society from our homes throughout city traffic and national services. More and more central decisions are based on analysis done by machine learning and suggestions made by AI technologies. Technology-driven democracy is already taking place and building relevant algorithms that can help improve laws. And this requires a very good balancing act between efficiency and morality. Will AI love humans as we do? So our next speaker is a special breed of person who dedicates most of her time and skills and talents for the rights of others, a real warrior code poet. Audrey Tang is a civic hacker and Taiwan's digital minister in charge of social innovation, is known for revitalizing global open source communities such as Perl and Haskell. In the public sector, Audrey served on Taiwan's National Development Council's Open Data Committee and K-12 Curriculum Committee. In the private sector, Audrey worked as a consultant with Apple on computational linguistics with Oxford University Press, on crowd lexicography, and social text on social interaction design. The aim of this talk is to present V-Taiwan, a civic tech project and winner of EXDA's 2008 Future Voice Award. And it's demonstrating the possibilities of implementing coherent blended volition to co-create regulations. So Audrey's going to be teleporting with us shortly.
Unlike many people today, I'm an optimist. This strange condition began when I was 15 years old. That was 1996. I discovered that the future of human knowledge is on the web, and my textbooks were all out of date. So I told my teachers I want to quit school and start my education on the Wild Web. Surprisingly, the teachers all agreed with it. A year later, I founded a startup working on web technologies, and I get to join this fabulous internet community that runs with this crazy idea, an open, multi-stakeholder political system that runs the internet, still, today. Today, as Taiwan's first digital minister, I'm putting into practice the ideas that I learned when I was 15 years old. Rough consensus, civic participation, and radical transparency. Surprisingly, it's working, and it's transforming our society. 2 years ago, our president, Tsai Ing-wen, said an inspiring statement in her inauguration speech. She said, "Before, democracy was a clash between two opposing values. But now, democracy must become a conversation between many different values." Indeed, in conventional thinking, social benefits and business profits, for example, are opposing forces and often contradict each other, forcing the government to make trade-offs in this paradox. However, the idea of social innovation brings a brand new way of thinking. For people working on social innovation, the core objective may be achieved by, for example, developing business models to address social issues or environmental issues, and the government's role has changed. Instead of being the arbiter torn between different sides, we're now asking a different set of questions. We ask, what are our common values, despite different positions? And we ask, given the common values, can we find solutions that works for everyone? And this is the spirit of co-creation, a spirit for subversion of paradoxes. Civic technology, the branch of technology that enables millions of people to listen to each other instead of one person speaking to millions of people, is a core ingredient to co-creation. Indeed, in the past couple of years, Taiwan has been consistently ranked the top country internationally on open data, on internet participation, on women's digital access, digital inclusivity, etc. And all this was because we adopted open data and crowdsourcing as national direction since 2014. It was catalyzed and epitomized by an Occupy movement in March 2014. There was a live demo of mass participation. We occupied the parliament for 22 days. At the time, the MPs in Taiwan were refusing to deliberate a trade service agreement with Beijing, and so the occupiers got into the parliament at night and stayed in. For 22 days, we demonstrated how to deliberate a trade service agreement with the whole society. There were over 20 NGOs participating, the Greens, the Labours, the Independents, everybody. And we supported this whole deliberation with a radically transparent broadcasting, live streaming logistics system, which we exported to Hong Kong for the umbrella movement in the same year. It was powered by this community called GovZero. GovZero is a civic tech community with a call to fork the government. We take the government websites, which all ends in govtw, and make better open alternatives that ends in g0v.tw. For example, the annual national budget is hundreds page long in a PDF file and is very hard to read. But the GovZero's community's very first project was Budget GovZero TW, which shows the national budget in a way that everybody understands, and you can drill down to each and every budget details. Today, the system is adopted by 7 city governments, powers the participatory budget platform for Taipei City at budget.taipei, so that anyone can look at this map, find a part of city budget they care, and type in any question they want to ask, and the career public servants actually comes forward and answer for that part of the question. And starting next month, we're adopting this for the national government also. So this becomes a direct dialogue platform, not through the city council or the legislative, but for the career public servants to communicate directly with citizens. So why are there so many civic hackers in Taiwan like me who spoke to my clients during the Occupy movement saying, okay, I have to take a 3-week leave because democracy needs me? I think it's because our generation, I'm 37 years old now, were the first generation that enjoyed the freedom of speech after 3 decades of martial law and dictatorship. The freedom arrived in 1989, the year of personal computers. So for us, personal computer revolution and freedom of speech is the same thing. Our first presidential election by popular vote, 1996, is also the year that World Wide Web got popular. So internet and democracy, they're not two things, they're one and the same thing in Taiwan. So for the past 30 years, when we see free software, we always think freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom from surveillance, freedom from coercion, and never free of cost. Because we know that freedom is never free of cost. Our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation paid dearly for the freedom, and we need to use the software freedoms to keep it free, as we did during the Occupy movement. And the movement caused a revolution, although a peaceful revolution. There was a radical transformation of social expectations at the end of that year, and many occupiers just found ourselves elected mayors when we did not expect it. And because of this, the prime ministers resigned, and a new prime minister and engineer said, okay, so from now on, crowdsourcing, open data is just going to be the national direction. And occupiers and the civic tech people who supported them were then invited as mentors, as advisors to the public service to solve issues, international issues like Uber. And Uber is very interesting because it was a meme, a virus of the mind. A meme was called sharing economy. And it said that code dispatch cars better than laws. And so we have to obey code instead of laws. The meme spreads through apps from driver to passenger to drivers. And you can't really argue with a meme, just like you can't argue with the flu. It's not in the same category. So there's the protest. The taxi drivers surrounded the Ministry of Transport, demanding negotiation. But how do we negotiate with a virus of the mind? For us, the solution is through a deliberation that involves thousands of stakeholders. It is scaling down of the deliberation we just did with 500,000 people, so we think we can do it. And deliberation, thinking deeply about something, together, is an effective vaccine against the virus of the mind. When everyone, passengers and drivers, academics and public servants, they listen to each other and form a consensus, we become immune to divisive PR campaigns in the future. A proper deliberation with a focused conversation method involves 4 stages. The first stage is facts, where we collect evidences, first-hand experiences, objective data. And then after that is confirmed by everyone, we move to collect everybody's feelings about the same facts. You may feel angry, I may feel happy, and it's all okay. And after people converge on their feelings that resonates with everybody, we then talk about ideas. And the best ideas are the ones that address the most people's feelings. Then we translate them into legalese and slide them into decisions. However, if the decision-making process is not transparent, then the people on the street would speak a different language than people in the government, so they are not even agreeing on basic facts, let alone others' feelings. And so in that situation, ideas become ideologies, virus of the mind so potent that they can blind people to new facts and to each other's feelings. So our first step is always open data. That is making all the facts available and ask the private sector and civil society to share what they have. And next, we create an interactive survey on Polis to ask about how people feel. 4 groups of people emerged: taxi drivers, Uber passengers, and other passengers. And the Polis system shows each group how their shared sentiments are received by other groups. And the interesting thing is, it lowers people's antagonism, because you see all these people on different sides are your Facebook and Twitter friends. You just didn't talk about this over dinner. And so at the beginning, the people were on all the corners, but because we say we only give binding power of anything that people propose that convince a majority of all the different people. So participants converge on feelings that resonate not only with like-minded people, but across the aisle. So instead of distracting people with divisive statements, we attract people to focus on consensus statements that we can then use as the agenda to discuss in the face-to-face meetings. After we get such a set of feelings that resonates with practically everybody, it's now much easier for the government to engage the stakeholders and check with them one by one. Here's the consensus of the people. So do you agree? If you do agree, how do we translate that into law? Because it's live streamed and there's a full transcript, they're bound to the words that they said during this live stream consultation, and the stakeholders eventually agreed. When we ratified their agreements in August 2016, everybody knew it was coming, and everybody anticipated it. So today, Uber operates legally under the new framework, but so do the taxi companies, who are now adopting the same model that Uber is using for dispatching its cars. So this method works. The next question is, can we scale this process of listening? So right after the ratification, I joined the cabinet as the digital minister to explore the possibility through PDIS, the Public Digital Innovation Space. It's like a policy lab in the national level. We have designers, we have programmers, and we're automating away a lot of those chores the public servants are doing in order to make participation possible. More interesting, perhaps, than the technical contributions, we have a culture that we are bringing to the government. For example, I'm a radically transparent minister. By that, I mean all the journalists, all the lobbyists, everybody get to ask me questions, but I only answer publicly. So if I get a question from a private email, I will reply asking if it's okay to give my answer publicly. If they're not okay with it, I'll just link to my previous statements. And it's not just to the lobbyists and journalists, but also for internal meetings. For the hundreds of internal meetings that I held as I was the digital minister, everything was transcribed. The written record is checked for 10 working days for all the participants, and we publish it to the internet. The effect is very surprising. The civil service actually become very innovative and risk-taking to propose some very good ideas under this condition. That's because previously, before this radical transparency, the minister would get a credit if things go right, and the public service often gets a blame if things go wrong. But now, with this accountable record, if things go right, they get the credit because their name is on the transcript. But because this experimental method, if things go wrong, it's all my fault. So under this new condition, they become very innovative and open to a lot of interesting ideas. One of the ideas is adopting this thoroughly free software program called Sandstorm. It's a platform of our public service internal collaboration. We use the same tools, but open source tools. It's like Etherpad, like Weekend, which is like Trello, Rocket Chat, which is like Slack, and how the free software community is organizing themselves these days. We're also using it in the public service. And previously, the roadblock was on the cybersecurity issue, but we were able to find a community platform and for people to publicly audit this open source Sandstorm platform that solved the cybersecurity worries. It gets audited by our top-notch white hat hackers. So that we're now reasonably sure that the free software running on top of it doesn't suffer from cybersecurity attacks and issues. So we were able to do a lot of free software working methods just by adopting this, like there's interesting system proposed and written by young public servants, like an app for ordering lunchbox together or plan traveling together or whatever. It's really good to have this choice. Also, we established an e-petition platform as a way for people to participate. At the beginning, it did not receive much attention because while for single ministry issues, people were able to get satisfactory answers, for cross-ministry issues, people would get this very blank, very bureaucratic answer that doesn't really solve their problem, but just explains why each individual ministry can't do much about it. So after I become the digital minister, we asked each ministry to send a team, at least one person, to serve as participation officer or POs. We assembled this virtual team of about 50 people online using Rocket Chat and all the Sandstorm tools for engagement. So now in Taiwan, when people start a petition, they know that instead of just a dutiful response, they will actually get to meet with all the relevant ministries in Taipei, or we will travel to those rural areas and islands if they're about to petition for local development. We solve a lot of very interesting problems like this without exposing any public servants to risk. So we relieve their fear, uncertainty, and doubt around civic participation. For example, a petitioner last May said we have an explosively difficult to use income tax filing system that doesn't work on Mac and Linux. And so we invited all the people who complained the loudest, and eventually we co-created this year's tax filing system. And so by collaborating with the civic sector, we're building a robust environment suitable for the social innovators to grow, where the power of civil society could be brought into full play. And the venue we hold those collaboration meetings today, the Social Innovation Lab, was also co-created by 5 workshops of more than 100 civil innovators who were invited to communicate their conceptions and expectations for the lab. As such, we achieve a blended consensus, fulfilling all their purposes. For example, it has a resident chef, a resident kitchen and cafe, it stays open until 11 p.m., and people ask for me to personally stay here as a mentor, like office hour from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and I do that. Provided that my visitors agree to have our conversation posted online, anyone can have a discussion with me in the Social Innovation Lab. And it's not just in Taipei City. The different regional city social enterprises, social innovators, they also gather around me on my bi-weekly Taiwan tours. It's just me that travels, but everybody else, there's like 12 different ministries, about 20 people remains in Taipei. We still have a good video conferencing and transcription that makes it very easy for the public servants in Taipei to see the local issues being surfaced and being resolved in a very quick fashion because all the related ministries are there. And once the people solve it and publish online, all the other unrelated ministries now also understand, okay, so this problem is to be solved this way, and so it is a virtual learning team that's recurringly solve the social issues. So we tour around Taiwan, we see a lot of civil society initiated grassroots civic tech projects like the GovZero Air Pollution Observation Network. By combining the diverse talents in network communities, this project utilized the simple air quality sensor, Airbox, which is becoming very popular, and apply IoT technologies so that little by little and bit by bit, thousands of contributors accumulate a massive database about air quality that is closer to the actual places where people are active. And the exceptional advantage in Taiwan is we fully support instead of reject this civil society grassroots initiative. As part of the forward-looking infrastructure plan, we launched a IoT for Public Good program with a 4-year budget of about 5 billion Taiwan dollars. In the program, an enormous amount of environmental data on air products, meteorology, water resource, earthquake, disaster relief are integrated into a high-speed computing environment so that we can collaboratively discover the correlation between social activities and environmental phenomena more quickly. we're also working with Research Institute to assist with the manufacturing of domestic, affordable, high-quality PM2.5 detectors so communities can yield data of a higher accuracy. So why do we encourage such social innovations? Currently, there's many misunderstandings between government and the people due to lack of transparency and insufficient data. And using the air quality as an example, establishing effective dialogue is difficult until the source of daily air pollution are disclosed from various sources to the whole society on the same platform, including what pollution came from outside, from fixed sources, from mobile sources, etc. And we're very proud that the airbox-related projects and applications have been introduced over the world. So to speak, by uniting the strengths of the government and the public, Taiwan proved to be capable of not only solving our own problems, but providing such solution to other countries in similar situations as a reference. Moreover, we have a Sandbox Act in Taiwan, so if you want to experiment in fintech, in self-driving vehicles, you can apply for experimentation for 12 months up to 3 years. You get to break some laws during that period, but you need to explain why these laws need to be broken to achieve the common good for society. And during the experiment, we assemble a multi-stakeholder panel that collectively decide whether the society thinks this is a good idea moving forward or if it's a bad idea. If it's a good idea, regulations and laws get changed because of social innovation. If it's not a good idea, well, at least the risk is limited and everybody learns something from it, so we can try a different model next time. Through this way, Taiwan contributes our experience to the planetary civic society, focusing not just on 1 or 2 sustainable development goals, but especially on SDG 17, which is cross-sectoral, international, and cross-discipline collaboration. In conclusion, I would like to share a prayer with you about the subversion of paradoxes. When we see Internet of Things, let's make it an Internet of Beings. When we see virtual reality, let's make it a shared reality. When we see machine learning, let's make it collaborative learning. And when we see user experience, let's make it about human experience. When we hear that the singularity is near, let us remember that plurality is here.
So we're going to try and get Audrey through Skype. And I hope you guys have a lot of questions to ask because, I mean, this presentation dumbfounded me. It was really inspiring. And I think you can all draw the parallels of the Romanian situation, right? You guys have been under a regime for the last how many decades? You have inefficient and untransparent processes. Of course, the whole world can benefit from this model, but I'm sure Romanians actually can relate a lot with what's going on in Taiwan. And for me, it was amazing how they managed to democratize all that information and actually prove that with transparent information and the right models and the right will, you can actually make some pretty smart decisions, right, as citizens. We don't really need government per se in that sense, you know, at least that top-down form of it. So, okay, so this is pretty awesome. If you guys have any questions, please enter it at slido.com, #516, all right? Audrey's live on Skype. Okay, cool. Can Audrey hear us?
Hi, Audrey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, it's everybody live in here.
Okay, I see one question. Many other questions can come and people are welcome to like each other's questions.
So, if you can respond to the question.
Okay, so the question says, thank you for the talk. Does it include more people actually, or do they exclude people who are not good with computers? I think this is a great question. For us, the idea is what we call assistive civic technology, meaning that the technology is here to complement existing like town hall or face-to-face meetings. We never say technology are here to replace the face-to-face meetings. The meetings are there so that we use live streaming and other ICT tools to broadcast it to reach more stakeholders. And also, if it is about regional issue, like in the south of Taiwan, there's a small town called Hengchun, and they call for ambulance helicopters. And so all the stakeholders in the ministries, there's 5 ministries, we all travel to Hengchun and participate in a civic hall kind of discussion, and then also live stream it to people who are not in Hengchun. And we also do it in the rural islands as well, in the remote island of Penghu. For example, we also did such talks. So the whole idea is that we bring technology to people instead of asking people to come to technology. And we use technology to enable people who cannot otherwise access the town halls or discussions, but it's always in addition to the face-to-face gatherings. It's never in replacement for them. I hope that answered the question. Yes, there's another question says, how did you convince people to use the platform? I expect people were quite reticent at first. So I think it is interesting because in Taiwan, there's 23 million people in total, but about almost 5 million is on our e-petition platform and transparency platform. And I think this is a large fraction of people. It's about 1/4 of people who can go online or even more, because people know that if they petition something there, it is not just for the benefit of the public service, but it is actually a way to mobilize and to discover people who care about the same issues. So this serves a dual purpose. It is not just for the public service to understand the people more, it is also for the people to understand each other more. And so this platform provides a more convenient power, and once people are there, they discover, unlike other social media, where the people's idea about very divisive issues consume people's time, in our space, it is people's consensus that will get through and that has the real power. So I think people enjoy the space more than wasting their time talking and fighting on the internet. And I think that is also one of the idea why we designed the space, so we can't reply to people. Instead, people can just propose better ideas for other people to vote on. So the healthiness of the platform and the fact that people can mobilize using this platform, I think, are the 2 reasons why this become, I think, the second most popular internet platform run by the government in Taiwan. Yeah, there's 8 questions now, so I will be brief in my answers. So how do you convince the government to get involved? So we have to know that the government, especially the administration, it is not one person, right? It is many different public servants. And usually the public servant in the front line, the low-level public servants, they are mostly interested in this platform because if they answer once, they answer publicly, they don't have to answer the same questions over and over again. So for them, it saves their time. For the mid-level management in the public service, if they participate, the risk get absorbed, as I shared in my talk. The risk get absorbed by all the different participation officers and by our team at PDIS. So it is a way for them to innovate without having to bear the risk. And the top-level ministers, sometimes they're interested because they think it will share the credit to all the people involved so that it builds a closer relationship between the ministry and the people. And so I think those 3 different levels of consideration, time saving, risk reducing, and credit sharing, they are not fungible. You cannot work on just one to the detriment or sacrifice or the other 2. You have to at least let all the 3 levels see you are not here to harm anyone, and you can improve 1 or 2 of the 3 stakeholders. And if that is happening, then people will voluntarily start to come to our system. But if anyone think that increase their time, burden over time, increase their risk over time, they don't get the credit, then maybe they will not join. Yes, 13 people asked me if I want to be Romania's digital minister. This is a very political question. I believe maybe I have to first become a Romanian citizen to be a digital minister of your country. But very inconveniently, in Taiwan, a public official cannot hold foreign residency or foreign citizenship. So at the moment, it is not very easy. But I'm happy to report that we can share all the work that we're doing. It's on our PDIS website. The logo is the one that you're currently seeing on the screen. So you're free to take all our work, including the police source code, all the different ways that we're doing. All these are open source. So I would encourage the developers to try this very in a small scale. Even just the Slido software, you can use it in your next talk, right? The police software, you can use it as a survey. You don't have to introduce the whole systematic change. You can just let people get acquainted with this idea and let people who otherwise think internet is something that just separates people into this new space that brings people together, and then we can get much more buy-in from people who are at least neutral or apathetic about this kind of democratic tools. And then afterwards, maybe your digital minister will see that it is something very good, and then we're happy to talk diplomatically on that as well. Okay, so let me use one word or a few words for each question. Yes, we are part of the Digital 7 network, part of the Open Government Partnership Network, and so we're holding training like next month in New York, for example, and we're very happy to work on long-term relationships. And outside Taiwan, I think we learn a lot from, for example, Iceland, from Madrid, from Barcelona, and also from the UK for their e-petition systems. So these also are the systems where it's already working. We cooperated part of it in Taiwan. And the political leaders mostly see this as harmless. But once you create some cases like the tax filing software, they think this is a very good from a political voting or election kind of point of view. So it's hit and miss. Most time we're harmless, but sometimes we create a lot of credibility for people involved. And the challenges, I think, is not live streaming. We never use live streaming or kind of violent way of radical transparency. We always let people have a say in how to edit, in how to anonymize, or to change their transcripts and before publishing it. And so I think the negative reactions are there because it sets people's standards. For example, one of the laws, the Labor Act, gets announced for just 8 days instead of 60 days. And we get a lot of even foreign, commentary saying it should be 60 days afterwards. So we added that to the regulation afterwards. And I think the corruption is always there, but the idea is not just a few auditors, but for the whole citizen to be potential auditors. And machine learning, we're actively using it to reduce the risk and burden. We're not using machine learning to take place in judgment opinions, but actually in just simplifying the work done. So this is just like how we are saying technology doesn't replace face-to-face meeting. Machine learning is there to save people's time, but it's not to change or to replace people's judgment. The implementation, of course, is sponsored by the government, but also the GovZero movement and many other foundations and NGOs. We work because it's open source, we improve on each other's ideas. And so the new platforms, we're now working actively on mixed reality. I think that is the next platform where we can collaborate, for example, on city building, building a new airport and so on, and using mixed reality platform. Even people who don't have first-hand experience can participate meaningfully. The project is called Holopolis, like hologram polis, and you're welcome to join our Slack channel. And that's all the questions. Yes, there is a singer called Leonard Cohen, and one of his messages that I want to get across to you is that there is a crack in everything, and that is how the light gets in. So if you see something that's dissatisfying with your society, I think that you can turn it into opportunity by enlisting and recruiting people and into not just technology, but a common vision of going through the crack and be the light that shines upon the society. So it doesn't take the acceptance of technology, it just takes the idea of innovation for the social good. This is what we call social innovation. And I think social innovation is one of the key ideas that unites everybody in the different sectors together to solve common social problems. So we are thankful that there are so many social problems, because otherwise we don't have the excuse to unite people together. Thank you so much.
Can we get a big round of applause for Audrey?
Thank you so much.
That was really amazing. Is the mic working? Yeah? So I think Audrey is a great example of what I start out this track about, which is knowing firmly what it is you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. I'm sure you can imagine Audrey's scenario and all the challenges that they were trying to face and the solutions that he came up with. He basically used his creativity, his sympathy, his empathy, his dedication. Look how transparent and open he is. Basically, there is no question that he won't answer. And he's literally bringing forward a whole model that we could emulate. So I'd like to take this as an inspiration and remind you that when you come back after break, I'd like to see as many of you possible back here at this track. Tell everyone else what's going on here because there's going to be more exciting presentations. And we're going to start off the break with a very powerful exercise that I'm going to be leading with some very simple questions that's going to help you understand your why. So enjoy the break, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.